Gaslighting is one of the most insidious forms of manipulation because it doesn't leave bruises you can point to. It attacks your sense of reality. Someone who gaslights will deny things that happened, reframe conversations, or insist you're overreacting until you start wondering if you're the one losing it. The goal is control. If you can't trust your memory or perception, you'll start leaning on their version of events instead. You might recognize it in small ways at first. Maybe you remember a fight that ended with them throwing a cup and they say, "That never happened, you're imagining things." Or you bring up a promise they made and they reply, "I never said that, you always twist my words." Over time, those moments pile up. I've talked to people who told me they'd kept voice memos because they couldn't trust their own memory anymore. That's a clear sign something's wrong. So what can you do when the gaslighting starts? There are 3 practical moves that help rebuild your sense of truth. Document facts. This isn't about catching someone to shame them. It's about protecting yourself. Start a simple, dated log, short notes, the date and time, what was said, and how it made you feel. Save text messages, emails, and screenshots. Use voice memos when you can. Hearing your own voice describe what happened can be grounding. Photos, calendar entries, and receipts are objective anchors you can point to when your memory is challenged. If the interaction is in person and safe to do so, a quick, private note afterward can preserve details before they blur. Trust your gut. When someone repeatedly tells you you're wrong about how you feel, your instincts start to feel like the enemy. Remind yourself that feelings are valid data. They don't need permission. If a situation leaves you confused or unsettled, that's important information. Instead of trying to argue them into seeing your view in the heat of the moment, give yourself space. Say something simple like, "I remember that differently. I need some time to check my notes." Or, "I'm not comfortable continuing this conversation right now." Pausing protects your clarity. Get outside validation. Talk to someone who isn't entangled with the manipulator, a friend, family member, therapist, or co-worker. Share your notes and objective evidence. An outside perspective can confirm what you remember and, crucially, counter the isolating effect of gaslighting. Professionals can also help you sort patterns and plan steps, especially if the manipulation is chronic. Objective sources, messages, timestamps, witness accounts, and professional notes are the scaffolding that rebuilds your sense of truth. They don't erase the emotional impact, but they make it harder for someone to rewrite history. You don't have to prove anything to anyone else to protect your mental health, but having verifiable evidence makes it easier to set boundaries, make decisions, and, if needed, take formal steps like reporting abuse or seeking legal advice. Gaslighting is draining, but it's not subtle magic. It's a strategy you can see, name, and dismantle with simple, steady practices. Document, trust yourself, and reach out. Now let's talk about love bombing, because this is one of the trickiest moves to spot when you're swept up in the beginning of a relationship. At first, it feels like being on a high. They flood you with compliments, surprise gifts, non-stop texts, grand romantic gestures, and promises about a future that seems to have been written for you alone. "You're perfect. I've never felt like this. Let's move in next month." It's intoxicating, and if you're lonely or hopeful, it feels like finally being seen. I've heard from so many people who describe that dizzying honeymoon phase, someone who seemed to adore them every hour of the day, and how immediate and total that attention felt like proof everything was meant to be. That intensity is the red flag. Love bombing is a tactic, affection offered in massive doses to speed up trust and dependency. Once that trust is secured, the affection changes. It becomes conditional. Compliments turn into critiques that hit the places you were most vulnerable about. Gifts are used as reminders of debts or favors. The constant attention shifts into monitoring and restrictions. Affection becomes a leash. The person who once said, "I'd never leave you," is suddenly cold or punishing the moment you don't comply. So how do you protect yourself? The main defense is patience. Real love grows slowly. It settles in over months and shows up consistently in small, ordinary ways. Keeping promises, showing up when you're sick, treating your friends kindly. If everything is accelerated, moving in, escalating commitment language, intense declarations after only a few dates, slow down. Set boundaries early and loudly enough that you can test for respect. For example, if they demand to text you constantly and you say, "I need a few hours to myself," notice what happens. Do they respect it, or does the affection evaporate and resentment appear? Try small boundary tests. Turn down a last-minute plan. Ask to see how they handle your need for alone time, or say no to a gift you don't want, and watch whether they persist or respect your choice. Also, keep your support network close. Share concerns with friends or family. An outside perspective cuts through the fog. Keep your routines and hobbies. Dependence is a tool manipulators use. And trust your gut when compliments feel like pressure, or when love comes with a timeline. If you find someone who alternates between intoxicating affection and withdrawal when you speak up, that pattern matters. Be patient with yourself, insist on boundaries, and remember, love that needs to be rushed isn't love, it's a tactic. Guilt tripping is when someone turns your compassion into leverage. They act wounded, disappointed, or morally wronged, so you'll bend, apologize, or change your plans, even when you haven't done anything wrong. It works because kind people hate causing pain. They'll go to surprising lengths to stop someone else from hurting. If you've ever stayed late at work because a friend made you feel selfish for leaving, or agreed to something you didn't want because your partner sighed and said, "I guess I'll do it myself," you've met guilt tripping. How to spot it? The person makes their emotions the evidence. "I'm so upset" becomes shorthand for "you did something to justify my upsetness." They may use phrases like, "After all I've done for you, I can't believe you'd abandon me," or dramatic silence that makes you feel like a monster. The tactic often escalates. More theatrical sadness, subtle digs about your character, or reminders of past favors framed as debts you must repay. Notice the pattern. One-off sadness is normal. Repeated emotional blackmail is a strategy. You don't have to be cold to resist. Start by separating guilt from responsibility in your own head. Feeling bad when someone accuses you isn't proof you're at fault. Take a breath. Ask yourself, am I actually responsible for this feeling or outcome? Naming this difference out loud helps. I hear that you're hurt. I'm not responsible for how you feel, but I want to understand what happened. Use calm, short replies that acknowledge feelings without taking the blame. Examples you can say out loud. "I'm sorry you feel hurt. I didn't intend that, and I can't be responsible for your reaction. I understand you're upset. That doesn't mean I did something wrong. I want us to solve this, but I won't be shamed into changing my plans." If the person keeps moaning about how you've wronged them, mirror back neutrally. "You're really upset about this." That robs the tactic of its moral charge because you're not arguing about their emotion. You're acknowledging it without capitulating. Make a private script you can recycle. Breathe, name the tactic in your head. This is guilt tripping. Separate guilt from responsibility and state your boundary. Practicing a few lines makes them easier to use in the moment. Finally, remember, kindness doesn't mean permission. You can be compassionate and firm at the same time. Saying no or standing your ground doesn't make you unkind. It just protects you from being manipulated. Now, let's look at another common tactic and how to spot it before it starts to take hold. Triangulation is when someone pulls a third person into your conflict to shift power. A friend, an ex, a colleague, even a parent. Suddenly, you're not just talking to the person you care about. You're competing for approval, defending your reputation, or being gaslit through someone else's version of the story. I remember feeling small and frantic the first time it happened to me. My partner would bring up what a mutual friend said, or text an ex's opinion to justify a choice. I felt like I had to earn back favor through other people, and that confusion is exactly the point for the manipulator. Here's the key. Don't play that game. Triangles only work if you allow the message to travel through a third party. Refuse to be the middleman for their drama. That means first, recognizing the pattern. If decisions, criticisms, or evidence keep arriving via someone else, treat it as a red flag, not as neutral information. Next, speak directly. Say something simple and clear, like, "If you have a concern about our relationship, tell me yourself. I don't want to hear about it secondhand." Use I statements so it doesn't escalate into an accusation. "I feel uncomfortable when this gets brought to me through others. I want to talk to you one-on-one." That removes the fog the manipulator depends on and puts the responsibility back where it belongs. You'll also need short, practical lines to stop the behavior in the moment. Try, "I'm not going to discuss this through someone else," or "I'd rather talk to you directly than be triangulated." If they insist on involving others, call it out calmly. "When you bring X into this, I feel like I'm being set up to defend myself instead of having a real conversation." Naming the tactic takes away its power. Keep the follow-up focused and private. Request a one-on-one conversation, set a time, and stick to it. In that private space, ask for specifics, facts, not second-hand opinions, and keep to your boundaries. Avoid retaliating by triangulating back. Don't start texting mutual friends or airing grievances through others. That just re-entangles you. Finally, check your own reactions. Triangulation is designed to provoke jealousy, panic, or a need to prove yourself. If you notice you're suddenly anxious to win someone over, pause and breathe. Ground yourself in what you know from direct communication, not the rumors or interpretations fed through the triangle. Clear, direct, one-on-one communication is the dismantling tool. It refuses the role of battleground, forces accountability, and exposes manipulation for what it is. If they want to keep the drama, let them. You don't have to join. In the next section, we'll look at how to set boundaries that stick and what to do when direct conversations are ignored. Projection is when someone throws their own behavior onto you to avoid responsibility. I learned this the hard way. A partner once accused me of always flirting with people at parties, but the jokes, the late-night texts, the secretive phone calls, those were theirs. Calling me the thing they were doing was a preemptive strike. If I scrambled to explain and defend myself, they'd steer the whole conversation away from their actions. When someone accuses you of the thing they're doing, your instincts will probably scream to defend, to prove you're not that person. Don't. The most powerful response is quiet observation. Let me explain what that looks like and why it works. First, pause. Take a breath and resist the urge to fire back. A loud defense hands the projector control of the narrative. Now the fight is about you, not their behavior. Instead, stay calm and neutral. Say something small and non-committal like, "That's an interesting way to put it," or "I hear you." Those short replies don't validate the accusation, but they also don't escalate. Second, watch for contradictions. If someone insists you're dishonest but frequently changes their own story, you've got a pattern. If a boss accuses you of cutting corners while they micromanage and hide approvals, notice the mismatch. Projection reveals itself through repetition and inconsistency. Over time, their accusations will become thinner, or they'll trip over details when you stay observant. Third, document. Quiet observation should be active, not passive. Keep notes, save messages, and timestamp incidents. I started a simple habit. After a charged conversation, I jot one-line notes about what was said, who was present, and what actions followed. That record helped later when the person denied what happened. It's not about building a case to punish them, it's about protecting your reality. Fourth, check in with someone you trust. Projection can make you doubt yourself. Manipulators count on that. Talk things over with a friend, partner, or therapist who knows you. External perspective helps you see whether the pattern exists and keeps you anchored in what actually happened. Fifth, set boundaries when necessary. Quiet observation doesn't mean letting projection continue without consequence. If someone persistently accuses you to control or confuse you, limit those interactions. Refuse to engage in blame games, and, if needed, be explicit. I won't discuss this if you're going to accuse me unfairly. Keep it calm, brief, and firm. Finally, practice self-compassion. Being targeted by projection is disorienting. Remind yourself this is about their accountability, not your worth. Over time, their contradictions will start to show. People who project rely on fast emotional reactions. When you slow down and document, you take power away from that tactic. Next, we'll explore a related tactic, gaslighting, and how it differs from projection so you can spot both and respond effectively. Another common tactic is the silent treatment. And if you've ever felt your stomach drop when a text goes unanswered for hours or days, you're not alone. Silence becomes a weapon. The other person withdraws to punish, to test, to control. They watch you scramble, reread your messages, craft perfect follow-ups, and somehow convince yourself that if you try harder, they'll return. That chasing is exactly what the silent treatment is designed to trigger. I remember a time when a partner would go quiet after a small disagreement. I turned into a detective, checking my phone constantly, apologizing for things I hadn't even done. The anxiety felt louder than the actual fight. That's not accident. Intermittent attention makes us cling. It creates a cycle where your self-worth gets tangled up with someone else's availability. The cure isn't clever comebacks or emotional escalation, it's self-respect. The trick is to stop rewarding the withdrawal. That doesn't mean you match coldness with coldness. It means you match silence with peace. Practical steps you can use right now. Recognize the pattern. Notice the pull to text again and again. Name it. They're using silence to control my reaction. Send one clear boundary-setting message if needed. Example: I notice you've gone quiet. I won't chase attention. If you want to talk, I'm open. Otherwise, I'll focus on other things. Short, calm, final. Then step back. Don't fill the silence with more messages, explanations, or social media stalking. Fill it with life instead. Call a friend, go for a run, finish a project, read, or plan something you enjoy. Replace the itch to chase with supportive contact. Reach out to people who make you feel seen, rather than begging visibility from someone who uses absence as leverage. Keep your tone peaceful, not punitive. You're not trying to win with coldness, you're reclaiming your time and emotional energy. If the silent treatment is frequent and used to manipulate, that's a serious red flag. Consistent emotional withdrawal isn't a quirk, it's a pattern of control. Protecting yourself might mean stepping back more permanently, or bringing in a counselor to help untangle what's happening. Matching silence with peace robs the tactic of its power. You stop being bait, you get your calm back, and you invest your energy where it actually belongs. In people who respond with respect and consistency. Fear appeals. You know that tight, prickly feeling you get in your stomach when an ad, a headline, or even a partner's tone hints something terrible is about to happen. That's not accidental. Fear is one of manipulation's oldest tools because it's effective. Make someone anxious, then hand them the one thing that promises relief. I remember scrolling late at night and pausing on an email that screamed, "Act now or lose everything." My heart raced. 30 minutes later, I'd almost handed over a credit card for a solution I didn't need. Why did I almost do it? Because the message created a tiny panic and then offered a simple escape. Advertisers sell urgency and safety. Politicians sell protection from a threat. Sometimes people close to us use the same playbook, suggest danger if we don't comply, then position themselves as the safe choice. The simplest countermove is awareness. When you feel that spike of fear, ask calmly, who benefits from me being afraid right now? Try this as a habit. If a politician is constantly talking about a looming crisis, who gains power if people stay scared? If an ad insists a product will save you, what is the company selling beyond comfort? Subscriptions, data, repeat purchases. If a partner uses fear to influence choices, whose control is being reinforced? Fear fades under analysis. It's rarely persuasive when you slow down and look at the facts, so give yourself concrete tools to diffuse it. Pause. Literally take a breath. Time breaks the spell fear casts. Label it. Say out loud, I'm feeling afraid right now. Naming an emotion reduces its intensity. Ask 3 questions. Who benefits? What's the evidence? What's the worst realistic outcome, and how likely is it? Check quick facts. A 5-minute search, a reputable source, or a friend's perspective often shows how exaggerated the threat is. Use data over drama. Numbers, dates, and independent sources are your antidote to emotional manipulation. Sleep on it when possible. Many decisions feel urgent because someone wants them to be. A night's rest exposes manufactured urgency. Make it personal. Set up a tiny rule. When you're scared by a message that wants money, votes, or compliance, delay any action for 24 hours. Track how your urgency changes. I did this after that email. I slept, checked reviews, and realized it was a scam. The rush to act dissolved. Fear isn't always bad. It protects us. But it's worth asking whether the fear is proportionate and whose interests it serves. Logic, data, and a little time are the best tools to restore calm. With that clarity, you'll start noticing the patterns and choosing responses that actually help you, not just keep others in control. False urgency. You've probably felt it. That sudden rush when someone says, offer ends tonight, or this is your last chance. Your heart speeds up, your hands twitch toward your wallet, and thinking goes on autopilot. That's exactly what manipulators want. False urgency is a classic psychological hack. Create an artificial deadline so you don't have time to weigh facts, call a friend, or notice the red flags. Panic compliance is the goal. I remember once getting an email from an account specialist saying my subscription would be charged triple unless I acted in the next 30 minutes. I almost clicked the link before I noticed the awkward grammar and a shipping address for a country I'd never visited. The panic had me halfway through the checkout flow, and only when I took a breath did the scam look obvious. If I'd delayed, I'd have avoided wasting money and stress. So how do you stop that spike of urgency from making decisions for you? The defense is delay. Literally step away, put your phone down, breathe. Give yourself permission to not decide right now. Simple, practical moves that work. Pause and name it. Say out loud, this feels urgent. Naming the feeling breaks the spell. Use a built-in delay. Set an alarm for 10 to 30 minutes, or tell yourself, I'll decide tomorrow. Most real offers survive a night. Ask for time and proof. Can you send that in writing? Or, I need to talk this over with my partner. Push for verifiable details. Check independent sources. Search reviews, look up the company phone number, or ask someone you trust for a second opinion. Have go-to responses ready, short, automatic lines like, I'll think about it, or no thanks, not today. Keep you from stammering under pressure. Try a breathing trick when the panic hits. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 6. It slows your heart and gives your thinking brain a moment to boot up. Even 10 seconds of calm makes a difference. Remember, real opportunities don't need to trap you with act now. Genuine deals, honest employers, and trustworthy people will let you reflect. If someone punishes you for taking time, that's not urgency, it's manipulation. Practice this in small ways. When a sale screams limited time, still sleep on it. When a caller insists immediate action, hang up and call the official number yourself. Over time, you'll notice those breathy little alarms fade, and you'll respond from choice instead of fear. One classic move you've probably seen 100 times without noticing is the foot-in-the-door technique. It's simple. Someone asks for a tiny favor first. Sign a petition, answer a quick survey, lend a pen. And once you say yes, they come back later with a bigger request. Because you already agreed, you're more likely to agree again. I learned how powerful this is the hard way. A colleague asked me to cover a single afternoon shift while she dealt with a personal emergency. I said yes because it was small and I wanted to be helpful. 2 weeks later, she asked me to cover an entire week during her vacation. I felt awkward saying no. I'd already established myself as the helpful one, and turning her down felt like breaking character. That's exactly what the technique exploits. People like to act consistently with how they've behaved before and how they see themselves. Why it works. Our brains don't like inconsistency. If you helped once, you start to think of yourself as the kind of person who helps. Changing that self-image creates internal friction, so it's easier to keep saying yes. Marketers, fundraisers, and even co-workers use little agreements to build up to big asks. It's not always malicious. Sometimes it's just poor boundary setting, but the pattern is the same. So how do you resist without feeling rude? Treat each request as its own question. Just because you said yes to one small thing doesn't mean you owe infinite compliance. A practical habit I use now is a 2-step pause. 1. Hear the new request fully, and 2. Answer it as if it's the first time I'm hearing from that person. That breaks the automatic, "I've said yes before, so I'll say yes again" reflex. Here are a few concrete ways to do that in real life. Pause and ask for details. What exactly would you need from me? That gives you time to evaluate cost. Reframe boundaries. I can help with X, but I'm not able to take on Y. Be specific. It's harder for people to squeeze you when you name limits. Use a time buffer. I need to check my calendar, or let me think about it, buys breathing room and lowers impulse compliance. Practice a few phrases. I'd love to help, but not right now, or I can do this one-off, but I can't make it a regular thing. If you want a short line for when the escalation is obvious, I said yes to that because it was small. That's different from what you're asking now. It's honest and puts the responsibility back where it belongs. Remember, consistency is a social good most of the time, but it's not a moral debt you must pay forever. Each favor is a new choice. Treat it that way, and you'll keep your relationships healthy without being taken advantage of. The door-in-the-face technique. Picture this. A coworker asks you to take over an entire weekend project because they're totally swamped. You laugh inwardly, that's not realistic, and say no. Then they say, "Okay, could you just write the report section and I'll handle the rest?" Suddenly that sounds doable, and you agree. That pattern, ask big, expect a no, then ask small, is the door-in-the-face technique. How it works. The manipulator intentionally starts with an extreme request that you'll likely reject. The follow-up request is the one they actually wanted all along. Because your mind just compared a reasonable ask to something outrageous, the smaller request feels like a concession, and your automatic impulse is to meet that perceived compromise. It hijacks your instinct to be cooperative and fair. You see this a lot in everyday life. A parent might demand you drive 3 hours every weekend, then settle for a single Sunday visit. A salesperson shows you the most expensive model first, then drops to the mid-tier, as if doing you a favor. Even friends use it. One will suggest borrowing a large sum, then ask for a much smaller loan when you balk. It's subtle, and the loosened emotion after the initial rejection makes the second request land more easily. So how do you defend yourself? The key is to judge each proposal on its own merits, not in contrast with the prior extreme ask. Practical steps. Pause. Give yourself a brief moment before answering the second request. That pause breaks the automatic compromise reflex. Reframe the offer. Ask clarifying questions. What exactly would that involve? Or, how long would that take? Getting specifics forces evaluation of the actual request. Use an objective standard. Think, is this reasonable given my time, money, or values? If a task takes 3 hours and you only have one, say so. Say no when needed. You don't need to accept something just because it feels like a compromise. A polite, firm refusal protects your boundaries. Offer a true alternative if you want to help. If you can't give money, offer resources or a smaller, sustainable favor. That switches the dynamic from manipulation to real negotiation. Practice phrases you can use. I can't commit to that. I can do X instead. Let me think about the specifics and get back to you. That first option is unrealistic for me. The second is still more than I can take on. One tip from personal experience. I used to say yes too quickly when people eased into requests, especially at work. After a few burned-out weeks, I started using a mental checklist: time, impact, priority, before replying to any follow-up ask. It made it a lot easier to spot when someone was trying to guilt or nudge me into agreeing, and it saved my time and sanity. Remember, a smaller request doesn't become fair just because it follows something outrageous. Treat each ask as its own decision. Gaslighting by proxy. Another tactic to watch for is gaslighting by proxy, when a manipulator recruits other people to back up their false version of events. It's not just one person telling you you're wrong anymore. Suddenly friends, co-workers, or family members are echoing the same story, and that chorus can make you start doubting your own memory and sanity. Picture this. You and your partner disagree about something small, a missed plan, a harsh comment, and later that partner talks to mutual friends. The next time you bring it up, those friends say, "No, you remember it wrong. We were there and they didn't say that." Or at work, a colleague starts telling others you blew a deadline, and now your inbox is full of messages from people assuming you screwed up. It feels like the ground has shifted under you because the social proof is stacked against your version. Here's the crucial truth. Multiple people repeating a lie doesn't make it true. Manipulators often use other people purposely, sometimes by lying to them, sometimes by framing the story in a way that makes others side with them, to isolate you. That pressure is meant to make you retreat and accept the new reality. So what do you do when you realize you're being gaslit by proxy? Step outside the shared narrative. That means pausing and taking a breath instead of absorbing the group's version as fact. Give yourself space to collect objective details: dates, times, messages, emails, photos. Physical evidence isn't just proof to others, it's proof to yourself that your memory matters. Keep a clear record, start a private log, short notes on what happened, when, and who was there. A journal, screenshots, or calendar entries can make a big difference later when memories feel fuzzy. Even a simple line a day helps anchor your version of events. Don't try to out-yell the chorus. Arguing with a group rarely works. Instead, use simple, calm lines. I remember it differently. I have a record that says otherwise, or I'm not going to debate this in a group. These responses reclaim your voice without escalating things. Check for honest confusion versus collusion. Sometimes people genuinely misremember, other times they're being weaponized. Ask direct, private questions to those involved. Did X happen? I want to understand. Watch for evasiveness or repeated alignment with the manipulator. That's a red flag. Build a neutral support network. A therapist, HR rep, or a trusted friend outside your immediate circle can give perspective. They don't have to take sides. They help you validate what you know to be true and plan next steps. Set boundaries and protect yourself. If the proxy group keeps pressuring you, mute conversations, decline invitations where manipulation occurs, and limit what you share. You don't owe the collective a rewrite of your reality. Being targeted by gaslighting by proxy is disorienting, but remember, consensus isn't proof. Your memory and experience matter. Document, breathe, and seek clarity. And don't let the volume of other people's voices drown out your sense of what actually happened. Emotional blackmail. You've seen it before. The tone shifts, the words sharpen, and suddenly the choice isn't a choice at all. If you loved me, you'd do it. That sentence is the whole playbook. Emotional blackmail uses love, guilt, and fear as weapons. It threatens emotional or sometimes physical consequences if you don't comply. Withdrawal of affection, a temper flare, a manipulative "I'll hurt myself," or even a promise to make your life miserable. The aim is to short-circuit your judgment by fusing fear and love into one overwhelming reaction. Do this now or lose what matters. Think about a time you froze in a conversation because you felt cornered. Maybe your boss said, "If you cared about this team, you'd work this weekend," or a partner said, "If you loved me, you'd stop talking to your friends." It feels personal because it is personal. They're attacking the part of you that wants to be good, loyal, and loving. That's the trap. Instead of persuading you with respect, they force compliance by making you afraid of the consequences. So what actually helps? The single most effective defense is separation, emotional, and sometimes physical. You can't see clearly when you're inside the storm. The amygdala fires, your chest tightens, and any logical response gets buried under guilt and panic. Step out of range before you answer. That might mean stepping into another room, hanging up the phone, muting a message thread, or saying aloud, "I can't have this conversation right now. I need space." Distance doesn't mean coldness. It means clarity. Give yourself permission to pause. You don't owe an immediate response to manipulation. Use the space to breathe, to check your facts, to ask yourself what you actually want, not what they're demanding through pressure. If the threat is physical or the other person escalates beyond emotional coercion, prioritize safety. Leave the environment, call someone you trust, or contact authorities if necessary. When you re-engage, keep it simple and firm. Scripts like, "I won't make decisions under pressure," or "I'll talk when we can both be calm." Protect your boundary without getting dragged into a guilt spiral. If the blackmail is repeated, escalation is your cue to build longer-term boundaries. Limit contact, get support from friends or a therapist, and make consequences clear, and carry them out. Manipulation thrives on inconsistency. You deserve relationships where love isn't a bargaining chip. Separation isn't punishment. It's a tool for self-preservation and clarity. Step out of range, breathe, and only then choose how you want to respond. Clarity only appears at distance. Gaslighting through humor. Then there's a trick that's so sneaky because it comes wrapped in laughter. Gaslighting through humor. You know the scene. Someone cracks a joke about your weight, your job, the way you parent, and everyone around laughs nervously. The punchline lands, you flinch, and the person grins and says, "Relax, I'm kidding." Suddenly, you're the one apologizing for taking it seriously. That "it's just a joke" line becomes a shield. Insults hide behind smiles. The joke gives the speaker plausible deniability. They can say they didn't mean it, that you're overreacting, that you don't have a sense of humor. When you point out that the comment stung, they call you sensitive or accuse you of ruining the vibe. The intention shifts to your reaction, not the remark itself. That's the gaslight, making you question whether your feelings are reasonable. This plays out in relationships, at work, even among friends. Maybe it's a partner who jokes about your cooking being inedible and then laughs it off when you're hurt. Maybe it's a colleague who keeps making just kidding jabs about your competence in meetings, or an inside joke that always isolates you. The repeated effect is corrosive. The laughter becomes a way to normalize disrespect. So what counters this? Name it directly. You don't have to perform a speech or explode. A short, sober response cuts through the smokescreen. Try. That's not funny, that's mean. It's simple, unambiguous, and it puts the behavior on the table instead of letting it hide behind humor. If you want softer language, you can say, "I know you're joking, but that hurts," or "I don't find that funny." The point is to identify the impact, not to debate the intent. When you name it, watch how things change. The person can either own it, apologize, stop making that joke, or at least ask what you mean, or double down and accuse you of being too sensitive. Both responses tell you something useful. If they own it, you just shifted the dynamic. If they gaslight you further, you get clearer evidence the humor was a mask for control. Remember, tone and body language matter. Say it calmly, make eye contact, and don't over-explain. Humor stops being harmless when it erases your comfort. Holding that boundary, by naming the behavior and your feelings succinctly, protects your sense of safety and makes it harder for someone to hide behind a laugh. Once you start naming it, the power starts to shift. Now let's tackle information overload, one of the quieter, sneakier tactics. Instead of yelling or threatening, the manipulator floods you with facts, charts, jargon, and rapid-fire evidence until you're so overwhelmed you just nod along. It feels smart, it looks convincing. But often that flood is a smokescreen, complexity used to hide shaky reasoning or outright deception. Think about a time you sat through a meeting where someone kept throwing slides at you, each with denser numbers than the last. Or a conversation where a partner suddenly used technical terms you'd never heard and then expected you to agree. I've been there, nodding while my brain frantically tried to catch up. It's exhausting, and that exhaustion is intentional. How to push back without escalating. Slow the pace. Say, "Hold on, that was a lot. Can we pause?" Giving yourself a beat breaks the momentum they're trying to force. Breath, make a note, and reset the rhythm of the conversation. Ask for a plain summary. Use a one-sentence test. What's the single point you want me to take away? If they can't state it simply, the complexity may be a cover. If they respond with another wall of words, that's a red flag. Request written proof. Can you send that to me by email or show me the source? Manipulators often avoid leaving paper trails. Putting things in writing forces clarity and gives you time to verify. Take time to think. Say, "I need to check this before I agree. I'll get back to you tomorrow." Immediate agreement is what they want. Time is your ally. Use it. Ask them to explain like you're 5. A simple line. "Explain it for me in plain English," can expose hand-waving. People who genuinely understand something can simplify it. People who don't, can't. Restate their claim. "So you're saying X, is that right?" Paraphrasing forces them to commit to specifics. If they keep changing terms, they're moving the goalposts. Make it practical. Carry a notebook or open a note app during heavy conversations. Write down claims and sources. If you're in a meeting, ask for the slide deck or a follow-up summary. After a heated exchange, confirm the key points by email. It creates a record and buys you breathing room. Watch for the telltale reactions: frustration, impatience, or aggressiveness when you ask for clarity. If they get defensive or turn your request into an attack, that's not confidence, it's manipulation. Remember, complexity is their smokescreen, clarity is your weapon. You don't need to out-jargon them. You need to keep the conversation simple, demand proof, and give yourself time. If they're committed to honest discussion, they'll appreciate the chance to explain. If not, their refusal to be clear tells you everything you need to know. Next, we'll look at another tactic they use when logic fails: emotional appeals that bypass reason altogether. Victimhood manipulation. Maybe it starts small. A friend who always has the worst luck. A partner who keeps reliving past hurts. A coworker who insists the world is out to get them. At first, you feel for them. Who wouldn't? But over time, that steady current of self-pity becomes a tool. The person uses their pain to deflect responsibility, to shut down criticism, and to make you feel guilty for even bringing up a problem. Every nudge toward growth or accountability gets met with hurt, with an accusation that you're being cruel or abandoning them. You raise an issue about money, time, or respect. Suddenly, you're the villain and their suffering is proof. What makes this manipulation so effective is the social armor it builds. When someone positions themselves as helpless, people naturally rally around with sympathy. Friends, family, even bystanders feel protective. That sympathy creates a kind of immunity. When you point out a pattern, it's dismissed as heartless. The manipulator then uses that protective circle to reinforce their narrative. Complaints become evidence of your cruelty, and your boundaries are framed as betrayals. You can probably picture it. Maybe you've tried to help and been burned. You lend money, you pick up the slack, you make excuses, and every attempt to encourage change is met with fresh displays of victimhood. Or maybe you've been on the other side, exhausted from being the perpetual rescuer, wondering why nothing ever changes no matter how much you give. So what works against this? Quiet boundaries. Not dramatic call-outs or public shaming, but calm, consistent limits that you uphold without getting drawn into moral arguments. Boundaries aren't punishments. They're statements of what you will and will not accept. Say it simply. I care about you, but I can't cover your bills. I'm not going to argue about this anymore. Then step away and keep your word. The point is to remove the platform for manipulation, not to escalate the conflict. A few practical lines that can help. I'm listening, but I won't engage when you call me names. I want to support you, but I can't take on your responsibilities. Use short, steady responses and avoid lengthy defenses. The manipulator thrives on emotional back and forth. Boredom is a surprisingly strong antidote. And remember, compassion does not mean compliance. You can love someone and still refuse to be used. Caring about someone doesn't require that you fix every problem or sacrifice your well-being. It's okay to set limits and to expect accountability. In fact, firm but kind boundaries are often the most loving thing you can offer because they force a reality check. If you're stuck, get support. Talk to a trusted friend or a therapist about what you're experiencing. An outside perspective helps you see the pattern without the fog of guilt. You don't have to stop caring. You just don't have to obey manipulation disguised as hurt. Charm offensive. You know that person who makes you feel instantly seen, remembers your weird hobby, laughs at your jokes, compliments your energy. That rush isn't magic, it's a tactic. Charm works because it's warm, fast, and flattering. It bypasses our usual guards and speeds us into trust before our brains have time to check the fine print. I've been on both sides of this. At a meetup, someone once acted like my oldest friend within 10 minutes. I walked away buzzing, convinced we were kindred spirits. Later, when I needed a small favor, that friendliness evaporated. That contrast is the dead giveaway. Charm is performance first. Commitment, maybe never. Here's the playbook charmers use. They pay intense attention to what you crave. Validation, a sense of belonging, respect. Then mirror those cravings back at you. If you want to feel respected, they highlight your expertise. If you want to belong, they tell you you fit right in. Mirroring feels comfortable because we're wired to like people who are like us. But when that mirroring is tailored to what you particularly crave and delivered with a spotlighted warmth, it's meant to lower your defenses. How to spot it? Things move unusually fast emotionally. The compliments feel specific but land like theatre. There's lots of you language but few follow-through actions. They're excellent with flattery but evasive about responsibility. Also watch how they treat people who can't benefit them. The barista, the assistant. That's rarely part of the act. The defense? Time. Real character reveals itself in small, boring moments over weeks and months, not polished opening acts. Slow the pace. Don't let compliments substitute for observable behavior. Ask for small, concrete things, a follow-up email, a quick reference, a check-in, and see if they actually do them. Notice consistency. Do their words match their actions regardless of the audience? Practical lines that buy you time. I appreciate that. Can I sleep on it? Or, that sounds great. Can we put it in writing? They're polite, non-confrontational ways to create distance without creating drama. Also, keep your circle involved. Other perspectives cut through tailored flattery. Friends and colleagues can often see the performance when you're too close to it. Charm feels good, and sometimes it's genuine. The trick is not to become cynical, but to become patient. Let charm run its show, and then watch whether real, quiet follow-through shows up behind the curtain. If it does, you've found a person worth trusting. If it doesn't, you've been given time to step back. Reverse psychology. You know that little spark that lights up when you suddenly decide to do something you were told not to? That's reverse psychology working like bait. Someone says, "Don't do that," and instead of stepping back, you lean in. It feels like your choice, you own it, but often it's been quietly planted. The manipulator pushes your buttons by pretending to respect your autonomy while steering you toward the exact outcome they want. I learnt this the hard way. A past partner would casually say, "You don't need to take that class," or "I wouldn't bother applying." I remember feeling this surge. I'll show you. I signed up, not because it was what I wanted most, but because I wanted to prove a point. Later I realized the choice had been engineered. The opposite of what I was told felt like freedom, but it was actually a reaction they predicted. How do they do it? Small moves, a warning framed as concern, a joke that drops doubt. I guess you wouldn't be ready for that kind of responsibility. Suddenly, the forbidden option glows. The manipulator makes you think the idea was yours by creating a gap. They remove direct pressure and let your rebellion fill it. You feel independent, but that feeling is the illusion they've constructed. To resist, start by pausing and asking a key question. Why would they want the opposite outcome? If someone is telling you not to do something, think about their incentives. Do they fear losing control? Are they protecting their ego? Will your choice make them look bad or change the balance in the relationship? Naming the motive strips away charm. It's not about your freedom, it's about their need. Next, call out the move internally or out loud, saying, "It sounds like you don't want me to do that. Why?" Forces clarity. If you want a short script, you can use, "I hear your concern. Can you tell me what outcome you're trying to avoid?" That simple question flips the pressure back to them and gives you information instead of an emotional reaction. Awareness breaks the illusion of independence they construct. When you recognize that the impulse to rebel is being courted, you can separate your true wants from the triggered response. Ask yourself, am I choosing this because it aligns with my goals or because I want to prove something? If it's the latter, slow down. Make a deliberate decision. Finally, set a boundary. If someone keeps dangling reverse psychology, respond with calm assertiveness. I'll make my own choice on this. If it's a pattern in a close relationship, bring it up when things are calm. I feel manipulated when you tell me not to do things I'm considering. Can we talk about that? You don't have to dramatize it. Steady, clear language wins. Reverse psychology feels flattering. You think you're in charge. But once you learn to ask why they'd want the opposite outcome and to name the tactic, you take back the steering wheel. Choices regain their true shape, and you stop performing independence for someone else's script. Selective honesty is one of the sneakiest tricks in the manipulator's playbook. You've probably met someone who drops one or two true things about themselves. A childhood story, an embarrassed mistake, or a confession about being bad with money. And suddenly you feel seen, even protective. That tiny reveal feels like a gift, but it's often just bait. I've seen it in my own life. Someone would admit to one small failure. I'd respond with empathy, and then that same person would ask for a huge favor or bend the truth in a much bigger way. And because I'd already trusted them, I let it slide. Here's the key. Manipulators sprinkle truth among lies to make their whole story believable. They'll use that small truth to create emotional currency. You now owe them your sympathy, your silence, or your cooperation. They'll then use that goodwill to push larger requests or cover up major deceptions. That's selective honesty, being honest in moments that win trust and dishonest when the stakes are higher. So how do you fight back without becoming suspicious of everyone? Focus on patterns, not moments. One honest statement doesn't erase a string of contradictory actions. Ask yourself, is this person consistently reliable? Do their admissions line up with what they do later? Noticing inconsistency is crucial. Honesty that's inconsistent is its own kind of deception. Practical things you can do right away. Track the pattern. Keep a quick note on your phone after key interactions. Over a few weeks, look for trends, promises broken, explanations that change, or truths that pop up only to serve a larger ask. Ask for context or proof when it matters. That can be gentle. Thanks for telling me that. Can we put the plan in writing? Or, I appreciate your honesty. Can you show me the receipts or the timeline? Neutral language when you confront contradictions. Instead of, you lied, try, when X happened you said Y, later you said Z. Can you help me understand the change? This lowers immediate defensiveness and keeps the conversation factual. Set small boundaries around favors. If someone uses a personal reveal to request help that feels disproportionate, say no or defer. I'm glad you told me that. I can't help with this right now, but I can help you find resources. Maintain emotional distance until a pattern is clear. That doesn't mean being cold. It means holding your trust like something valuable, not handing it out for one well-timed confession. Remember, manipulators count on us responding to that one truthful moment. You don't have to be cynical, just deliberate. Trust grows from consistent behavior over time. If someone's honesty shifts based on what they want, treat it as information about their strategy, not an invitation to ignore other warning signs. The more you watch for patterns, the less effective selective honesty becomes. Social proof manipulation. Have you ever bought something, joined a group, or agreed with an idea mostly because everyone else was doing it? That nudge, the feeling that if a lot of people accept something, it must be right, is exactly what social proof manipulators count on. It's not just sales pages or shady ads. It shows up in group chats, office decisions, comment threads, even friend circles. Herd behavior feels safe. Saying no can feel like stepping off a cliff. I remember once in a group chat where everyone started hyping a new diet supplement. The messages kept piling up. I tried it and lost 10 pounds. My skin cleared. Within a day, I was close to ordering. But then a thought stopped me. Why were there no links to studies? And why did the one person who mentioned side effects get ignored? Turns out the testimonials were cherry-picked affiliates, and a few people had normal fluctuations in weight. The consensus felt like proof, but it wasn't. Here's the heart of it. Consensus gives comfort, not evidence. When a lot of people agree, your brain shortcuts to probably true because being part of a group historically increased survival. That shortcut still works, often in our favor, but can be weaponized. Marketers, bad actors, even well-meaning peers can pressure you into choices that haven't been properly tested. How to resist? Practical steps you can use immediately. Isolate the claim. Separate the statement from the crowd. If someone says, everyone's switching to X, ask yourself, what exactly is the claim? Is it that X works better or just that it's popular? Demand evidence, not applause. Consensus is not data. Ask for studies, independent reviews, or first principles reasons. If the only support is, lots of people like it, treat that as a hypothesis, not a conclusion. Look for the dissenting voices. Popular ideas often have critics. Find them, read the counterarguments, and see whether they're being dismissed for convenience. Play a small test. Before you commit, run a low-cost experiment. Try the product, ask a few skeptical friends, or give yourself 48 hours to think. Real-world, low-risk tests reveal more than hype. Notice incentives. Who benefits if you follow the crowd? Affiliates, employers, trendsetters. Incentives skew how consensus is presented. Use simple lines to buy time. That sounds interesting. Can you send the source? Or, I'll think about it. I want to make sure it's right for me. Saying this lets you step out of the herd long enough to evaluate. Making this personal. When I started treating consensus as comfort rather than proof, I stopped making a bunch of avoidable mistakes. Impulse buys, jumping on trends at work, endorsing half-baked ideas. It's not about being contrarian for the sake of it. It's about giving your judgment a seat at the table. Next, we'll look at another tactic that pairs with social proof, how emotional language hijacks reasoning, and what concrete questions to ask when you feel your gut being pulled. Negging is one of those sneaky tactics that sounds like a compliment until you feel the sting. It's an insult disguised as praise. The classic line being, "You're pretty smart for your age." On the surface, it looks flattering, but the meaning underneath is, "You're not quite as good as you think, and I'm in a position to judge you." The effect isn't just annoyance. It quietly chips away at your confidence and nudges you to prove yourself. Think about a time someone said something awkwardly backhanded. Maybe a coworker told you, "Surprising you finished that so fast." Or a date said, "You're not like other girls I know." You walk away dissecting every word. That's the point. Negging lowers your self-esteem, so you start seeking approval. Answering their little tests, laughing off the remark, trying harder to show you're deserving. It's emotional manipulation dressed up as flirtation or humor. How does it feel in the moment? You might freeze, laugh uncomfortably, or try to justify yourself. Later, you replay it and feel uneasy, questioning whether you misread it. That uncertainty is the manipulator's fuel. The remedy is simple in idea, but takes practice in delivery. Clarity. Clarity means naming what's happening or removing yourself from it. You don't have to respond with drama. A calm, direct line like, "That came across as a put-down. Do you mean that?" Or, "I don't find comments like that funny," does two things. It calls out the tactic and forces the other person to stop hiding behind ambiguity. If they double down, it reveals their intent. Disengaging is equally powerful. If calling it out feels unsafe or pointless, walk away or change the subject. Silence is a valid response. You don't owe a defense for someone else's need to belittle you. Sometimes the cleanest reply is no reply. Here are a few short scripts you can adapt. "That sounded like an insult. Are you joking?" Tones as curiosity plus boundary. "I don't appreciate being backhanded compliments." Firm, low drama. "I'm not interested in this conversation." Clear exit. You might also talk it over with a friend afterwards. Getting an outside read helps you see patterns instead of one-off awkward moments. And remember, your worth doesn't hinge on anyone's mixed signals. Being steady about your own value makes negging lose its power. When you stop reacting, it stops being fun for them. And that's the real recovery. Anchoring is one of those tricks that's so invisible you don't notice it until it's already shaped your choice. Basically, someone throws out a number or idea first, a price, a statistic, a regular cost, and your brain uses that as the baseline for everything that comes after. I learned this the hard way buying a laptop last year. The salesperson started with the manufacturer's $1,500 original price and then showed me a $1,100 deal. Suddenly, $1,100 felt reasonable. It wasn't until I stepped outside, checked competitors, and did the math that I realized many similar machines were actually around $900. That first number had anchored my judgment. Salespeople and negotiators rely on anchoring constantly because it works. If the first price you hear is $1,000, then $700 sounds like a bargain, even if $700 is still more than what you would have paid if you'd started from a different reference point. It's not about trickery alone. Anchoring taps into a cognitive shortcut our brains use to save effort, but that shortcut can be exploited. So what do you do when someone throws out an anchor? The cure is simple in concept, not always easy in practice. Create an independent reference before you let anyone else set it for you. That means doing your own math and research ahead of time. Decide what a fair price looks like for you before the conversation starts. Practical steps you can use right away. Before you engage, set a maximum and a target price. Convert it to something tangible, per month, per use, or per feature, so it feels real. For example, a $700 laptop over 3 years is less than $0.65 per day. Do quick market checks. Look up comparable items, recent sale prices, or trade-in values. A couple of searches can expose a bogus original MSRP. Ask for itemized pricing and comparisons. If a dealer says this model sells for $3,000, ask to see comparable listings or the invoice. It forces them to justify their anchor. Use time as leverage. If you're unsure, say you'll sleep on it. Anchors lose power if you don't react instantly. Don't reveal your budget first. If you give the number, you hand over the anchor. Instead, ask for their best offer. If you negotiate, counter-anchor with your own number, but make it realistic and backed by data. Extreme lowball anchors can backfire. Make it personal. I now always set a private threshold before shopping. For big purchases, I calculate a no-regret price, the most I can pay without losing sleep, and I won't stray above it without independent proof. Anchoring is everywhere, but a little preparation neutralizes it. Do your math first, and you're less likely to be swayed by someone else's opening line. Next, we'll look at another common tactic that works hand in hand with anchoring, how scarcity and urgency are used to push decisions faster than they should be. Deflection. They ask, "Why are you so angry?" Or say, "You're changing the subject," and suddenly the whole conversation is about your tone instead of the thing you brought up. That's deflection. A power move that diverts attention away from the real issue so the person doesn't have to answer for their behavior. It's subtle, and because it feels personal, we often take the bait and end up defending ourselves instead of getting to the point. Here's how it usually feels. You come in with one clear concern: money, plans, boundaries, and within 2 minutes you're answering questions about your mood, your past, or something totally unrelated. The moment you follow that thread, the original problem is left untouched. That's exactly what deflection is designed to do. The fix is simple in idea, hard in practice. Focus. Keep bringing the conversation back to the original issue until it's answered. That means you don't chase every shiny distraction they throw at you. You don't get drawn into defending your emotions. You steer, calmly and firmly, back to the question that matters. Practical things you can say. Short, natural, repeatable. "I'm not trying to get sidetracked. Can we answer the question I asked?" "I hear you, but right now I need an answer about X." That's a different conversation. Let's finish this one first. A tiny script you can use when someone says, "You're changing the subject." "I'm not changing the subject. We were talking about specific issue. Can you tell me when you'll specific action?" Them. "But you're so upset." "I'm calm. The question is, when will you action?" Another common deflection is the blame flip. "Why are you making this into a big deal?" Respond with focus. "I'm not making it a big deal. I need to understand what happened with event. Can you explain that?" Use the broken record technique. Say your question or boundary. Wait for a response. If they deflect, repeat it in a slightly different way. No ranting, no piling on. Just steady repetition until you get an answer or they refuse. Keep your tone even. Deflection wants an emotional reaction. Don't give it one. Take a breath before you respond. If you feel yourself getting pulled into argument or shame, name it and set a limit. I can continue this when we both focus on the issue. If not, I'll take a break and come back. Finally, practice. Try these lines in front of a mirror or with a friend. The more they roll off your tongue, the less likely you'll be derailed when it happens for real. Deflection loses its power when you refuse to follow it, and when you keep bringing the conversation back to the thing that actually matters. Word salad. Another tactic you'll run into is what people call word salad. It's not a compliment. It's when someone strings together vague, contradictory phrases to wear you down. The aim isn't to communicate, it's to confuse, exhaust, and keep you off balance. I remember one conversation where a colleague kept circling between half-statements, philosophical asides, and shifting deadlines until I couldn't even tell what the ask was. By the time I tried to answer, they'd moved the goalposts. Listen for the pattern. Long monologues that sound important but mean nothing, deliberate contradictions. I need this done right away, but I don't want it rushed. Or looping questions that never settle. The tactic drains your energy and gives the manipulator control because you start hunting for meaning that isn't there. The simplest, most effective counter is refusal. Not a rude shutdown, but a refusal to play the meaning hunt. Don't chase clarity where there isn't any. Names work. Say, I'm not following. Can you give me one clear request? Or, that sounds like a lot of different things. What exactly do you want me to do? Those two lines force a pivot from fog to action. If they keep circling, set the boundary. I can't keep trying to interpret you. Please say yes or no, or we'll pick this up later. A few practical responses you can use in real situations. Hold on, give me the exact decision you want me to make. Summarize that in one sentence. I'm not answering until you're specific, either X or Y. If this is important, put it in an email with one action item. I'll respond there. Tone matters. Keep your voice calm, neutral, and a little boring. Manipulators feed off drama. Refusal is about ending the game, not escalating it. If you label the tactic, do it gently. You're giving a lot of different directions. That's confusing. What's the single step? Sometimes naming it helps, but often the most powerful move is to stop engaging and ask for clarity or leave. There are moments when stepping away is the healthiest choice. A meeting that derails into circular talk, a partner who dodges accountability, or an online commenter spinning contradictions. Say, I'm done trying to pass this. When you're ready to be specific, we'll talk. Then follow through. Don't keep re-entering until there's a clear answer. Finally, practice your exits. It's okay to say, I'm going to pause this conversation, and put it in writing later. Word salad thrives in live, exhausting exchanges. Move things to a format where you can require specifics, an agenda, an email, or a decision checkbox. You'll save energy, reduce confusion, and take away the manipulator's favorite toy, your compliance. Isolation. One of the sneakiest tactics is how slowly it happens. At first, it's small requests. Can you skip drinks tonight? I miss you. Then a text about how your friends don't really understand your relationship. Then a comment about privacy. We don't need everyone knowing our business. These things can feel loving or reasonable in the moment, and that's the point. They're soft edges around a hard boundary being built around you. When you start to pull back from outside voices, control becomes easier. The fewer people who hear your side, the easier it is for someone to rewrite what's true. They'll tell you the friends who called you overly sensitive are the problem, or that your family always makes everything worse. They'll demand to see your phone for trust, or pressure you to stop seeing people who support you. Often it's framed as protection. I don't want you dealing with that drama. But the effect is the same. You feel more alone. You should know this pattern because it's common and because recognizing it gives you power. If you find yourself making excuses to leave a party early because your partner needs you, or if you hide the fact you called someone, that creeping secrecy is a red flag. Notice the small emotional reactions too. The way your stomach tightens when a friend mentions plans, or how you start to apologize for wanting time with people who love you. Those are signals, not drama. Defense is connection. When manipulation tries to shrink your world, your best move is to expand it, quietly, even if necessary. Keep in touch with at least one trustworthy person and set a regular check-in, even a single-line text once a day. If overt calls raise suspicion, use short messages or a code word with a friend so they know if you're okay. Backup photos and contact lists to a cloud account only you can access. Leave a spare key, an emergency cash stash, or a note with a neighbor you trust. These practical steps create options and keep voices in your life that can help you see clearly. You don't need to make big announcements. Small things matter. A weekly coffee with a cousin, a text thread you don't delete, a therapist you see online, or a journal you keep where you record dates and conversations. Manipulation thrives in silence. When nobody else hears your story, the story gets changed. When you keep connections alive, you maintain perspective and evidence, and you make it harder for someone to isolate you emotionally. If you feel shame about needing others, know that it's normal. Humans are social beings. Wanting outside voices doesn't mean you don't love your partner. It means you value balance and mutual respect. Isolation isn't romance. It's a tactic. Hold on to the people who know you. Even quiet contact can be the lifeline that helps you remember who you are. False equivalence is one of those quiet tricks that makes messy thinking feel moral. You've heard it. Someone watches two people argue, shrugs and says, "Both sides are bad," as if that settles the issue. I used to do this myself. It's comforting. If everything is equally wrong, you don't have to choose, you don't have to feel uncomfortable, and accountability becomes optional. But that comfort comes at a cost. It erases real differences in harm, motive, and power. Think about a time at work when someone complained about getting yelled at by their manager and someone else replied, "Well, your coworker yells too, so it's all the same." On the surface, it's balanced. But if the manager is using their position to intimidate and the coworker loses their temper once, those are not equivalent. One has authority, recurring impact, and the ability to influence careers. The other might be an ugly but isolated incident. Lumping them together softens the blow of the manager's behavior and leaves the person who's been harmed with nowhere to go. False equivalence is rhetorical manipulation sold as fairness. It works by shifting the conversation from specifics to symmetry. Instead of asking what happened, who has power, and who suffered, the focus becomes who can claim moral parity. It muddies accountability because both sides are bad, equalizes outcomes that aren't equal. It treats a shove and a punch as the same offense simply because both are physical. The counter is simple but powerful. Use scale and context. When someone insists both sides are to blame, ask concrete questions. What exactly happened? How often? Who has institutional power? What were the consequences? Those questions pull the discussion away from a vague moral equivalence and toward facts you can weigh. Equality of blame is not the same as equality of action. Saying both did wrong doesn't tell you whether one person's action endangered someone's livelihood or life while the other's was a momentary lapse. Here are practical moves you can make when you spot false equivalence. Name the asymmetry. They both raised their voices, but one person is the supervisor, and this has affected people's jobs. Ask for specifics. What did each person actually do, and what were the outcomes? Call out the comfort-seeking. Saying both sides are bad protects us from dealing with the harder question. Who needs to be held accountable? Demand proportionality. If one action caused lasting harm and the other didn't, our response should reflect that difference. Making this shift doesn't mean denying complexity. People can be partly at fault and still not equally culpable. But resisting the shortcut of false equivalence means we can hold people to account in proportion to the harm and avoid forgiving the powerful with a false shrug. Ego stroking. Now let's unpack one of the smoothest tricks in a manipulator's toolbox. Ego stroking. It sounds harmless. Who doesn't like a compliment? But when flattery is being used as a lever, it's designed to soften you up. Manipulators inflate your ego to lower your guard. Flattery turns to compliance, a few well-timed praises, then a favor, then a bigger ask. The pattern is deliberate. You'll notice it in the timing. Earned praise grows slowly. Manipulation flatters instantly. Real appreciation usually arrives after you've proven yourself, after small wins stack into trust. Fake praise shows up at lightning speed, often before there's anything to praise. If someone tells you you're brilliant the first time you meet, or praises a decision you just made before they really understand the context, raise an eyebrow. When someone praises too soon or too perfectly, ask, what do they want? Make this personal. I remember a time at a meeting when a colleague started complimenting my presentation. That was flawless. You should lead more of these. And within a week, they were asking me to take on their workload just for this month. The compliments had been the doorway to shifting responsibility. It felt flattering at first, but the compliments had a cost. Watch for the language. Genuine praise includes details. I liked how you summarized the data, especially the point about X. Manipulative flattery is broad and effusive. You're amazing, you're the best at this. Also watch for quick reciprocity, compliments followed immediately by requests, or compliments used to shut down criticism. Only someone brilliant like you would miss that, so can you just fix it? How to respond without turning into a suspicious hermit. Pause. Compliments don't require instant agreement. Take a beat before you react. Ask for specifics. Thanks. What part stood out for you? If they can't point to specifics, the praise may be surface level. Flip the question. I appreciate that. What are you hoping I can help with? That gentle redirect uncovers agendas without aggression. Check the timeline. Does this praise build on past feedback, or does it appear out of nowhere? Earned praise grows slowly. Manipulation flatters instantly. Consult a neutral party if a compliment leads to a big ask. A second opinion often breaks the momentum of someone trying to push you. You don't have to be cold, you just have to be curious. Compliments are nice, let them land, but don't hand over control with them. When flattery appears too perfect or too fast, treat it like a clue. Someone is trying to move you. Ask yourself the simple question, what do they want? That one question will save you from a lot of misplaced favors and costly compliance. Mirroring. You know that weird instant click you sometimes get with someone. Same laugh, same little shrug, suddenly you both reach for your coffee at the same time. That's mirroring. It's when another person copies your gestures, tone, pace of speech, even your music tastes or the words you use. It feels great because humans are wired to like people who seem like us. Mirroring shortcut that friendliness and creates fast rapport and a sense of trust. I remember meeting a new colleague who matched my posture, echoed phrases I used, and even picked the same lunch spot I joked about. Within an hour, I felt unusually comfortable. A few weeks later, though, it felt hollow, like our connection only existed when we were mimicking each other. That's the catch. Mirroring builds speed, not depth. Why it works. Subtle mirroring activates the same parts of the brain that respond to similarity. People assume similarity equals safety, so they lower their guard. For that reason, mirroring is a favorite tool for salespeople, networking pros, or anyone trying to accelerate closeness. The trouble is, imitation creates the illusion of intimacy. It's instant, but often shallow. So how can you spot it and protect yourself without dismissing genuine kindness? Notice timing. If someone only mirrors you at the start of a conversation and then fades, that's a red flag. Real relationships show consistent, mutual adjustments over time. Look for depth. Do their questions go beyond surface-level agreement? Do they ask about your values, not just your preferences? Check consistency. Do they mirror others the same way? People who mirror everyone in the room are likely using a technique, not building a bond. The key defense: slow down intimacy. If someone seems to fast-track closeness, give yourself permission to take the scenic route. You don't have to mirror back or reciprocate emotional disclosure right away. Instead, pace your sharing. Offer small, verifiable details and wait to see if they follow up later. Ask real questions. Push past small talk with open-ended questions that require thought, not just mimicry. Set boundaries gently. Say something like, "I'm enjoying getting to know you. I usually like to take a bit of time before I dive into deeper stuff." Mirroring isn't always manipulative. Sometimes it's unconscious and even flattering. But remember, real bonds develop over time. If someone's copying your moves to make you feel connected, slow things down and let genuine familiarity, not imitation, decide who earns your trust. Next, we'll talk about how to use authentic reciprocation to build real rapport without falling into the mirroring trap. Covert contracts are one of the sneakier manipulation tactics because they look like generosity but come with invisible strings. Someone does you a favor, covers your shift, lends money, buys dinner, and instead of saying, "I'd like something in return," they silently expect repayment. When you don't comply, they act betrayed, hurt, or angry, as if you broke a deal you never knew existed. You've probably lived this. A co-worker covers your deadline and later keeps dropping comments about how much they help people. A partner cleans the kitchen, then pouts when you don't reciprocate in intimacy. A friend picks up the tab and later tells you you've been taking advantage. That knot in your stomach, confusion wrapped in guilt, is the signature of a covert contract. The manipulator profits from ambiguity, no explicit agreement, but an emotional IOU. The defense is transparency. Don't agree to invisible terms. When someone helps you, say thank you and follow with a clarifying question or statement. "I appreciate this. What did you expect in return?" Or, "Thanks. I want to be clear. I'm grateful and don't owe anything unless we discuss it." These small moves force the unspoken into speech. If the other person tries to guilt you, "After all I did for you," name it calmly. "It feels like you expected something else. We didn't agree on that, and I'm not comfortable with hidden expectations." You also need short, practical scripts to use in the moment. Try lines like, "Thanks. I didn't know there was an expectation. Let's be explicit next time. If you want repayment, tell me what you need so I can decide. I appreciate the help. I won't accept favors that come with strings." Those phrases keep you firm without turning the interaction into a fight. If the person persists with passive-aggressive comments, set a concrete boundary. "I won't accept gestures that are meant to obligate me. If that's a problem, we should talk about it directly or step back from favors." Be honest with yourself too. We all sometimes run covert contracts, doing things hoping for love, status, or future favors without saying so. If you notice resentment after helping, ask, "Did I expect something I didn't say?" Practicing explicit asks changes relationships. Instead of doing something to earn appreciation, say what you want. "I can help if you can cover X next week." Or, "I'd like more emotional support. Can we plan for that?" When covert contracts are a pattern with someone, reduce one-on-one obligations, document agreements at work, or bring a mediator into personal disputes. Clarity removes the power of ambiguity. Favors become either freely given or openly negotiated. And that shift alone protects you from being guilted into commitments you never signed up for. Now let's look at one of the sneakiest moves manipulators use: over-explanation. This is when someone responds to a simple question with a textbook-length justification, charts, hypotheticals, backstory, all designed to do two things: make you feel overwhelmed and make your simple doubt look dumb. I've seen this in relationships and at work. A partner will explain for 20 minutes why they need their space, complete with historical patterns and hypothetical futures, until you start apologizing for asking a question. A boss will layer caveats, footnotes, and projections until you nod along, exhausted because disagreeing suddenly feels like you don't understand the complexity. That's the trick: complexity as a weapon. Sounding rational makes dissent seem irrational, so how do you break it? One surprisingly effective tool is simplicity. When someone unloads a mountain of justification, pause and ask in a calm voice, "Can you summarize that in one sentence?" It's disarming. It forces them to go from performance to point. If they can't reduce it, there's often no clear, rational center, just pressure and obfuscation. A few practical lines you can use right away. "That's a lot. What's the one sentence I need to remember?" "I'm getting lost. What's the main decision you want me to make?" "Can you put that in plain English?" If they push back, saying you're being impatient or missing nuance, that's itself revealing. A genuine explanation survives simplification. A manipulative one crumbles when asked to be concise. Other tactics to protect your space: ask for a written summary or 3 bullet points. Writing limits performance. Set a boundary. "I hear you, but I need the core point now. We can go through details later." Repeat back a single sentence and ask for confirmation. "So, you want X. Is that correct?" If they hesitate, the motive is murky. I practiced this myself. Last year I was caught in a conversation where someone kept layering reasons and exceptions until I felt wrong for asking a basic question. I paused, used the one-sentence line, and everything snapped into focus. The air went quiet because there wasn't a clear answer, just a pile of rational-sounding smoke. That quiet told me more than the explanations ever did. Simplicity doesn't just clarify facts, it exposes intent. When you force explanations into one sentence, you separate substance from spectacle. Use that pause, use that single-sentence request. It's a powerful way to turn the table from feeling pressured to being in control. Next, we'll look at another common tactic: the emotional dismissal, what it sounds like, and how to name it without apologizing. Divide and conquer. You start noticing little things. A colleague whispers something in the hallway and looks away when you approach. A partner tells you that they don't understand you the way you deserve. Or a family member keeps changing the story about who said what. Those small fractures are rarely random. They're the breadcrumb trail of a classic tactic: divide and conquer. People who want to stay in control often pit others against each other. If everyone is arguing, blaming, or competing, they're too distracted to notice the bigger pattern. Division prevents unity, and unity is the biggest threat to manipulation. When people come together and compare experiences, the flimsy stories and strategic omissions fall apart. That's why isolation and secrecy are favorite tools of manipulators. Let me make this real. I once worked on a team where the manager praised one person in private and criticized another for the same behavior in a public meeting. The result was a tense atmosphere where we were constantly trying to guess who was in or out. One day, a few of us finally sat down, no agenda, just a candid "what's been happening," and compared notes. We realized patterns: who got information last, who was consistently sidelined, phrases the manager used to pit us against each other. Once we had the shared truth, the manager's power to manipulate that dynamic evaporated. We started making decisions together and documenting conversations. The energy in the team shifted overnight. Communication is the counter. It sounds obvious, But it's not just talking, it's a deliberate practice of sharing observations, timelines, and feelings with others who are affected. Compare notes. Ask simple questions. What did you hear? When did that happen? Who was included in this email? Keep records, texts, emails, meeting notes, so you can see patterns instead of relying on memory. When multiple people hold the same facts, a manipulative narrative loses its grip. Practical steps you can use today. Reach out privately to one or two people involved and say, "Can we share what we each remember about X?" Keep it factual, not accusatory. Create a shared document or group chat where factual updates live. Transparency reduces the space for lies. Use neutral language when discussing patterns. "I've noticed," not "you're lying." If direct comparison feels unsafe, bring in a neutral third party, HR, a mutual friend, or a mediator. A quick caution. If you're dealing with someone abusive who retaliates when people connect, prioritize safety. Use discreet channels, document everything, and seek support from trusted outsiders. Comparing notes doesn't just expose manipulation, it rebuilds trust. Shared truth dissolves control. When people know they aren't alone, they stop playing the manipulator's game. With that clarity in place, we can look at concrete ways to set boundaries and protect ourselves without being pulled back into old cycles. Changing definitions. One of the sneakiest tricks people use when they want to win an argument is to quietly change the meaning of words mid-conversation. You're talking about one thing, say, trust, and suddenly they slide in a different definition so they come out looking right. "That's not what I meant by loyalty," they'll say, and before you know it, the ground under your point has been moved. This happened to me at work once. We were discussing deadlines and responsibility, and I used the word accountability the way my team uses it, taking ownership of a task and communicating problems early. My manager kept circling back to accountability, but with a different yardstick, punishing mistakes instead of preventing them. Every time I tried to explain our process, he would say, "You're defending laziness." And I realized he'd slipped the definition to suit his frustration. I felt confused, small, and like I was losing ground for reasons that had nothing to do with the actual issue. The cleanest counter is simple: freeze the definition early. Don't let the conversation turn into a word war. When someone shifts meaning, stop and ask one question, calmly and directly. "What do you mean by that?" Say it like a fact-finding question, not an accusation. That tiny pause forces them to put words on the table. 3 quick steps you can use in the moment. 1. Ask for the definition. When you say loyalty, what exactly do you mean? 2. Repeat it back. "So you mean X. Am I hearing you right?" 3. Lock it in. "Okay, for this conversation, let's use that meaning. I'll respond to X." By repeating their words, you expose the reframe and make it explicit. If they try to wiggle, call that out. Earlier, you said X, now you're saying Y. Which one should I address? People who rely on shifting meanings hate being asked to commit. It deprives them of the wiggle room. You can also set your own definition proactively. When I say teamwork, I mean we share information and support each other. If that's different from what you mean, tell me. That prevents future derailment and gives you a clear standard to return to. If they keep switching, use pauses and boundaries. Say, "I want to resolve this, but we're going in circles about what the words mean. Either we agree on definitions or we schedule another time to talk." And don't be afraid to document it. An email summarizing the agreed definitions can stop future gaslighting. Words only work if everyone agrees on their meaning. Freeze the definition early, hold people to it, and you'll take the power back from anyone trying to win by moving the goalposts. Appeal to authority. You've probably heard it 100 times. Experts say this is the best way, or doctors recommend this. It feels reassuring because most of us grew up being taught to respect experts. I know I do. If a credentialed person tells me something, my guard naturally drops. That's exactly what manipulators count on. When someone leans on authority without showing their work, they're borrowing prestige to avoid scrutiny. I remember scrolling through my feed and seeing an ad for a miracle supplement that opened with "Top physicians agree." No names, no institutions, just a vague appeal that made the product sound untouchable. My first thought wasn't trust, it was curiosity. Who are these physicians, and where's the evidence? The ad couldn't answer that because there wasn't any. The defense to this tactic is simple: verification. Real experts don't mind being checked. They can point to sources, studies, institutions, or at least explain their reasoning. A genuine authority will either reference peer-reviewed research, provide a link to the study, or be willing to say, "Here's how I know." If all you get is "experts say," treat it as a red flag. Here are practical steps I use whenever I see an appeal to authority. 1. Ask which experts. Names matter. If someone claims a group of specialists agrees, ask for specifics. If they can't name them, that's a shortcut to control your trust. 2. Check credentials and affiliations. A title alone isn't enough. Where do they work? Are they independent or funded by an interested company? Conflicts of interest change how you interpret a claim. 3. Look for primary sources. Demand the original study or statement. Summaries and headlines often overstate findings. You can usually find the paper or official guidance with a quick search. 4. See if there's consensus. Experts can disagree. One doctor's hot take is not the same as the weight of the field. Consensus statements, systematic reviews, and meta-analyses are stronger indicators than a lone voice. 5. Note the timing and context. Science evolves. Advice from 10 years ago may be outdated. Also, context matters. A study about mice doesn't directly translate to human recommendations. It's worth saying this: skepticism isn't the same as cynicism. I'm not suggesting you distrust every credentialed person. Rather, treat "experts say" as an invitation to learn more, not a stop sign for questions. When you demand sources, you're not being rude, you're being careful. That small habit protects you from persuasive shortcuts and helps you make decisions based on evidence, not authority alone. Repetition conditioning. The more you hear something, the more you believe it. It sounds obvious when you say it out loud, but in practice it sneaks up on you. I remember a time at a job where a supervisor kept making offhand comments about my competence. Little digs, "You know how slow you are," slipped into meetings, a joke here, a sigh there. At first I shrugged them off. After months of the same tone, I started doubting myself. That steady drip of criticism didn't have to be true to become a truth in my head. Propagandists and abusers repeat messages until they feel like truth. Healers and marketers know this too. Repeat the mantra and it becomes a habit of thought. The psychology behind it is simple. Familiarity feels safe. The brain takes shortcuts. Something repeated is easier to process, and fluency often gets mistaken for accuracy. It's why jingles stick, why slogans work, and why a looped social media clip can convince you of an idea you'd never have picked up from a single exposé. To resist, track patterns. Don't rely on your mood or memory when something has been pushed at you over and over. Start keeping a small log, on your phone, a note, whatever you'll actually use. Record what was said, who said it, where you heard it, and how it made you feel. Over a week or two, patterns become visible. Is the message coming from the same group? Does it show up right before decisions are made? Is it used to shame or to isolate? Frequency isn't fact, it's training. Here are a few practical moves you can use the next time you sense the repeat effect pulling at you. Pause and annotate. When you hear a recurring claim, take a breath and jot it down. Context matters. Count the sources. If the same voice or channel keeps repeating something, that's different from independent verification. Reality check with a trusted person outside the loop. Ask, has this come up for you too? Fresh perspective breaks the rehearsal. Demand evidence. Repeaters often rely on emotional weight rather than concrete proof. Set boundaries. If someone consistently uses repetition to manipulate you, whether in a relationship, at work, or online, limit exposure. It's okay to mute a group or step back from a conversation. This isn't about becoming cynical, it's about becoming deliberate. Recognizing that repetition trains you gives back your agency. When you're tracking patterns, you stop being a passive receiver and start being an investigator of your own beliefs. Hold on to that. It's the skill that makes the next strategy, checking sources and claims, far more effective. Emotional flooding. Sometimes people will try to drown you in feelings, sudden tears, a screaming match, or engineered chaos, until your head goes fuzzy and your logical brain checks out. That's emotional flooding. The tactic is simple but effective. Create such a high emotion environment that you stop thinking clearly. The goal is to short-circuit reason so you agree, apologize, or take blame just to make it stop. I learned this the hard way. Early in a relationship, I'd sit through blow-ups that started as small disagreements and within minutes felt like being hit by a storm. By the time I could form a coherent response, I'd already conceded. It wasn't because I was weak. It was because I hadn't given myself permission to take time. The counterintuitive but reliable counter is time. Emotion without space is manipulation. Give yourself that space. Practical steps you can use in the moment. Recognize the escalation. If voices rise, tears start on cue, or topics jump wildly, name it internally. This is flooding. Slow your breath. 2 deep inhales, slow outhales. It lowers your arousal and buys seconds. Use a short, calm anchor phrase out loud. I can't talk right now. I need a break. Let's pause and come back in 20 minutes. Say it once, clearly. Then step away. Physically remove yourself if possible. Go to another room, take a walk, or step outside. If you can't leave, close your laptop, put on headphones, or stand up and face a wall. Space breaks the feedback loop. Ground yourself. Count to 30. Name 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch. This helps re-engage rational thought. When you return, keep the conversation structured. Re-establish a rule. We can't solve things when it gets like that. If we can both stay calm, I'll continue. Validate the feeling without surrendering control. I hear that you're really hurt. I want to understand, but I won't be yelled at. Offer a time frame. I'll come back in 30 minutes. If we can't keep it respectful, we'll pause the conversation for today. Words that help. Use what feels natural. I need time to think. Let's continue this when we're calmer. I see you're upset. I'm stepping out and we'll talk in 20 minutes. I want to listen, but I can't while I'm being shouted at. A few important boundaries. Don't equate stepping away with abandoning or being manipulative yourself. Taking time is self-protection and clarity building. If someone lashes out at you for setting that boundary, that reaction shows the tactic working. It's not a reason to stay. Finally, prioritize safety. If flooding includes threats, destruction, or you feel unsafe, remove yourself and get help. Call a friend, a hotline, or the authorities if needed. Over time, practice makes this easier. The more you step away and return on your terms, the less power the flood has. Emotion is real, but it doesn't get to decide the pace of the conversation. Learned helplessness. Another pattern I've seen again and again is learned helplessness. That slow, quiet surrender that creeps in after you've been controlled or punished so many times you stop trying to change things, even when you actually could. Maybe you know the feeling. You've been told that won't work one too many times, or every attempt to speak up has been shut down, and eventually it's easier to be silent. I remember a job where I stopped suggesting ideas, not because they were bad, but because the last 3 times I'd been shot down publicly. My brain started saving energy by not trying at all. Later I realized escape routes existed. New roles, different teams, even small changes in how I showed up. But my reflex was surrender. Psychologically, learned helplessness is conditioning. The mind links repeated negative outcomes to action, and the safest response becomes inaction. It's not laziness or moral failure, it's an adaptive response that goes too far. When the system punishes attempts to change, giving up reduces immediate pain. But over time it replaces autonomy with a default of surrender, and that becomes its own kind of prison. The good news is that conditioning can be reversed. The cure isn't a dramatic overhaul overnight, it's small victories. Think of agency like a muscle. If you haven't used it in a while, you don't bench press 100 pounds right away. You start with tiny reps and build. Here are simple, real things you can try today to reclaim decision-making. Make one small choice that's purely yours. Pick your breakfast, change your route home, decide the playlist. It sounds trivial because it is. Trivial wins add up. Say no to something minor. Practice the shape of a boundary in low-stakes situations so it feels natural when it matters more. Ask for a clarification or a small favor. Speaking up once and having it respected rewires your expectation. Keep a wins list. At the end of the day, jot one thing you decided. Over a week, those entries form proof you can act. Celebrate the tiniest success. Acknowledge it out loud or tell a friend. Reinforcement matters. Each tiny decision sends a signal to your brain. Action doesn't always lead to punishment. Over time, those signals rebuild trust in your own choices. You'll start to notice a shift. What used to feel risky becomes manageable, then normal. If this rings true, be gentle with yourself. Learned helplessness didn't form overnight. It won't lift overnight either. Small, consistent victories are how you take agency back, one micro-decision at a time. Next, we'll look at how to scale those wins into bigger, sustainable changes. Self-defense through awareness. Think of awareness like putting a light in a dark room. The person trying to manipulate you thrives in the dark. Confusion, rushed feelings, flattery that feels a little off. When you flip the light on, the seams show. For me, that flip started with one tiny habit, giving myself permission to notice first, respond later. Here's the simple truth. The ultimate antidote to manipulation is awareness, not judgment, not a clever comeback, just seeing the tactic for what it is, naming it inside your head, and refusing to react on autopilot. That naming is tiny but powerful. When you silently think, that's guilt-tripping, the emotional heat drops. It's like stepping back from a stove. The burn is less likely. Practical way to build that muscle. Notice the body. Manipulation often triggers a physical response. Your heart races, your throat tightens, your stomach flips. Treat those sensations like radar, not commands. Acknowledge them. Okay, my chest is tight. That usually means I'm being pressured. Name the tactic out loud or in your head. Labels matter. That's gaslighting. That's urgency pressure. That's flattery to get me to say yes. Naming takes away the mystery and the shame. Pause and breathe. Even 3 slow breaths create space between impulse and reaction. I used to lose arguments because I answered before I thought. Now I say, give me a minute. Or simply breathe for 10 seconds and the whole dynamic changes. Reconnect with your goal. Ask, what do I want here? What is theirs? When you compare motives, you can decide intentionally instead of being pulled. Choose a response. And remember, exiting is a response. Saying, "I need time," or walking away is often the strongest answer. A quick example from my life. A colleague once tried to force a decision by saying, "We only have this window now. If you don't agree, we'll lose the client." My first gut wanted to say yes to avoid fallout. Instead, I caught the tightening in my throat, labeled it urgency pressure, breathed, and asked for the data. It turned out there was no real deadline, just a push to get me to commit without facts. Naming it saved me time and sanity. Small practices you can do right now. Before answering any emotionally loaded ask, count to 3 and name what you're feeling. Keep a short list of labels in your mind: guilt tripping, gaslighting, projection, bait and switch. Refresh it every week by journaling one interaction where you used a label. Role play with a friend so the pause feels normal, not awkward. Remember, manipulation dies when seen clearly. Awareness restores choice, and choice is freedom. The more you practice seeing and naming, the less power any manipulator has over your decisions. Next, we'll use that regained choice to build boundaries that stick.